Welcome back to Seekstan and welcome back to S&C Coaches React. Today's just a straight up reaction to Valarie Allman. She is a unit. She is the
A phenomenal athlete.
6 foot 70 kilos, I think. One of our commenters on our video we did on John Hack mentioned we should have a look, and I wasn't aware of her. So she's the 2020 Tokyo Olympics Discus gold medalist, and she has some very interesting training, but she has a few power clean complexes that we want to get to first. So the first one is a 122 kilo power clean. So this is somewhere in the region of 1.7 times body weight, which is insane, and it is a great power clean.
Yeah. I think the main thing you're looking at with throwers is like the finesse. The technique doesn't really matter, but this is just so absolutely heavy. And it's quite technically good. Like, any athlete in the world would be happy with a power clean that looks like that, aside from weightlifters. Feet don't go out crazy wide. It's not like there's a massive smashy contact and a real big looping around of the bar. It's unbelievably impressive.
Yeah, like there is, as an athlete, so in terms of I'd put power cleans in two different camps. So you have like weightlifter power clean for technique, and then athletic power clean for sports, and hers fits right into that athletic power clean for sports, hence the gold medal in discus. And there's nothing in this that I'd really change if she was an athlete I was coaching. Now you'd finesse it up a little bit just due to the knowledge we would have, I suppose, coming from weightlifting, but there's nothing really wrong here for sport. She's getting everything she needs out of power cleans for her sport, and this is very impressive. 122 kilos. It's a good power clean. There's nothing in this that I'm like, sometimes you see athletes do power clean and we see a huge starfist jump, and we see an incredibly low rack position down here and they shimmying up. She's a nice appropriate width jump, and rack position is great. She's still holding the hook grip by the looks of things. Really clean rep, great speed. She's seriously focusing on that turnover, which is super important, a huge benefit, that speed for our athletes. So it's on the money.
Yeah, the other thing as well, and why this power clean is very good, is you don't see that breakdown in momentum. So a lot of time particularly with like big, strong, heavy throwers, they'll have a power clean that will look like a deadlift, and then they smash it off their hip and they kind of just bring it up. Whereas this has the correct momentum. First pull is slightly slower than the second pull. She's really pulling hard to get under the bar in the power clean. It's very good, and there's no degradation really in like the speed or power because of the weight.
Yeah, like we'll see elite male discus throwers. You'll see them, they'll deadlift it and then they'll do something like 200 kilos for a hang power clean with straps, but it'll be incredibly smashy, and they'll turn it over as fast as they can, but they'll have a horrendous rack position. And of course, they're getting everything they need out of that power clean as well. But if the possibility was there for something like this for power cleans for all sports athletes, this is what you'd be looking for. So then we've got 73 up to 120. So a lot of the weightlifters are looking at like she's quite a long extension, maybe a little bit too much contact. But again, as we're looking at this from a athletic point of view, again, this is perfect. These are really consistent, which is a great thing as well. They all look the exact same, and she's catching them all at very similar heights, which is very high. Yeah, which is the main thing there.
That's, I think, as well, like if you're an athletics coach looking at your athletes as they were doing power cleans, like she's not being really slowed down by any of the weights here, which is really impressive. Like going the whole way up from 70 kilos up to some 120 kilo power cleans here. At no point is that bar slowing her down, or is no point that bar kind of crushing her as she's catching it. So very good, very strong.
In terms of numbers she'd need to hit, in my mind, I wouldn't really see her needing to get any more than this 122. I don't see a huge amount of benefit. It's unlikely that she could train the power clean so much that she would get to a place where she's catching 140 at that same height. So the reality is, if she could, it would take a serious amount of work on her end. So it wouldn't really be worth it for her trying anymore. Now, of course, she'll still need to keep training the power clean for the rest of her career if it benefits her, as she'll have to work on it to keep the power clean at that level. But I don't see more weight being very useful on these power cleans. So this is a very interesting one. So this was at the start of a training session. I think she was said first time touching a barbell this fall. So this was 2 clean pulls from the floor, 2 power cleans from the floor, 2 pulls from mid-thigh, 3 power cleans for mid-thigh, and 3 front squats. And if you gave this to a weightlifter, they would shit the bed. They would be so like, what is the point in this power clean complex? And for her, this makes perfect sense. So she's obviously a power athlete. She's at the start of her off-season phase, so she's doing a huge amount of volume training, so a lot of high volume, a lot of repetitions. But she's keeping it kind of specific to her other work that she'll be doing later on, which is heavy power cleans, as we've seen. So she's going quite broad with her sets and reps, but still keeping it quite specific in the benefit of those. They're good front squats.
Yeah, I think the big thing people make the mistake of, they'll see something like this, they'll see that snapshot and say, oh, she's doing a crazy long complex. This is obviously terrible. Like, why would that make sense for strength and conditioning? But that tiny little piece of nuance of, like, at the start of a training block, when she's gaining capacity, it makes perfect sense. Like, it's exactly where it should be.
And finally, then we have just another heavier power clean. So this was a 113, but obviously this was after or before we saw the 122, which is phenomenal progress. So again, same technique, very, very good pull under, great catch position, feet are close, good rack position. It's
it's really, really good. If you're a thrower, if you're a track and field athlete in general, and you're looking to kind of model yourself around somebody's technique, or how much technique do I need for my throwing or my sprinting or whatever it is, this level of technical prowess would be bang on. It would be perfect for you as an athlete.
If you read the comments on this one, she talks about how long it took her to clean up her technique in the power clean. So it said it took her 3 years and hundreds of sessions working on technique and building strength to perform a proper power clean in 113. So she mentioned 3 and a bit years ago that she'd done 113, but it was very, very ugly rep. And now she spent a lot of time addressing that and cleaning it up, which is phenomenal. And I suppose I'll probably tell you about the level of athlete she is, which obviously the best discus thrower in the world in her category. She's put the dedication in. It's a lot of thing we talk about sometimes with the Olympic lifts for athletes is, do you really need it? And the biggest issue is time and quality repetitions. And can you put the time and skill development into learning the Olympic lifts and not have it at the detriment of your sport? And unless you're a professional athlete and you know it's going to be very beneficial, a lot of times it's not hugely the most beneficial way to go. But obviously in this case it worked out incredibly well.
One other interesting thing I get from watching her videos is she seems to be training in an Olympic weightlifting gym.
Or somewhere there's a lot of Olympic lifts done for sure.
Yeah, so I could be wrong on that, but a lot of USAW posters and stuff in the background, jerk blocks that look like they're years and years old and not necessarily in like a training center, different sets of Alico plates over different iterations of what Alico plates look like, and good technique, you know.
So I'd be very interested to see what kind of a split jerk would look like from her, maybe a power jerk depending on what she's doing.
Yeah.
So then she's a few more stuff in her story. So Turkish Getups, done incredibly well, huge amount of control, great movement and confidence from positions. So obviously shoulder health would be something that would be absolutely vital for discus throwers and very, very important for her to maintain that. And obviously a lot of shoulder health is very well benefited by stability work, and the Turkish Getup is a great one.
Yeah, 100%. I think particularly when you see how strong she is, it's very easy for athletes like that to become very internally rotated. Like if they're pressing a lot, pulling a lot, the shoulders will eventually just round forward. And so this kind of stuff will be a real savior in terms of not only like injury prevention and posture maintenance, but also in terms of the actual output she gets while throwing discus. Like you will lose certain ranges of motion if you don't maintain like your shoulder health. So it's very important not only for injury prevention but for performance as well.
Next up we have is the weighted jumps with a trap bar. Now the weighted jumps is something that, if depending on what literature you're reading, what you stay up to date on, will make you view it in different scenarios or different opinions. So the well established current theory is that the lower limbs produce maximum power output at the jumper's own body weight with no additional body weight. And so you'll see power production at the highest, and as soon as you start weighting it, the power production seems to go down kind of inversely with the increase in weight. Now, one thing that does go up when you add weight to jumps is what's known as ground reactive forces. So the force going into the ground when measured via a force plate goes up when you add weight to those jumps. Now, normally when we get athletes, weighted jumps would be a bad idea. You want to maximize power output and power training and learn the habit of being powerful. You know, any kind of athletes, any kind of track and field athletes really that are not doing stuff like discus throwing. However, in the case of discus, because you're using a weighted implement, it might certainly be beneficial for a discus thrower to increase those ground reactive forces and increase their throwing ability potentially.
One or two things you might want to watch if you were doing the jumps with a trap bar or something like that. See a small bit of elbow bend and then kind of flexion and extension in the elbows. That will hold back your ability to produce the maximum amount of force and get the highest level of ground reactive forces. So in this case, it would be very, very useful just to have a pair of weightlifting straps on the bar and allow those arms to hang fully loose as you're doing the jump. Besides that, the setup looks pretty much perfect. Like on blocks, the blocks are at the right height where she's in a really good powerful position just before taking off, and she gets some legit height. Like this is probably a 25 or 30 kilo hex bar, with 15s on each side. Like these are not light weighted jumps. They're very heavy, and her heels are coming at least a foot off the ground.
I can't tell if they're 9-grammetries or something else. I don't think they are, but I would recommend if you do jump, don't jump in your weightlifting shoes. So all mammals jump from their forefoot or the ball of their feet, so you don't want to be weighting the back of that foot with the heavy weightlifting shoes. So just make sure you're always jumping in non-weightlifting shoes. They're typically quite heavy. So then some farmers walks wearing a like an O2
elevation
mask.
training mask.
Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about the elevation training, and for her it doesn't matter at all, I would think.
I think what might be happening here, or the case where I've seen elevation training masks used in farmers carries, is they're getting people to focus on diaphragmatic breathing. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of the time, if you just get an athlete to do farmers carries, they'll tuck their abs in and they'll just kind of squeeze their abs in around their spine. They'll just potter along, and their breathing then becomes really compromised because of it.
Okay.
Just a small bit of breathing apparatus where, like, if anything else, it just makes it louder as she's breathing, and that kind of audio cue can really help with people drawing their diaphragm down, making sure their abs are staying tight while their abs are also moving in and out. That could be the application that's being used in here.
So farmers walk to be very beneficial for throwers. So rear back, mid traps, fucking rear delts, I should say, mid back, traps, proprioception with your arm and your back moving at the same time, moving your whole body through movement, through space, all very beneficial for athletes, especially stuff like track and field. Next up, we have got some battle ropes, so just some general conditioning. Never really cared for battle ropes, but I've no problem with them.
No, whatever you do in a conditioning circuit really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just making you tired, basically.
Literally. And any amount of muscular endurance for the shoulders is going to be beneficial for throwers when they're doing a lot of work. Now, you might make the argument, would battle ropes, for example, negatively impact her slow twitch to fast twitch fiber ratio in her shoulders? And the possibility is actually might do that. Now, my argument against that would be, given the caliber of athlete she is, I don't think it matters. However, there is certainly an argument there that you could get some fast twitch to slow twitch fiber distribution if you did it too much. There is some studies where it's shown after a single workout the percentage of slow to fast twitch does actually change after a single workout in some cases. Now, it's quite minute, but it is present. But you do, again, as we talked about recently, you do see athletes doing periodization, block work, spending a lot of time in high volume training, power athletes, sprinters, all getting a benefit from this. So I think the benefit from the aerobic work and the conditioning is probably outweighed by that. Next up then we have is an 80 kilo power snatch, again done with the consummate kind of classic technique is a power clean, same kind of upper thigh contact, which is very interesting. Zero arm bend, which is a delight to see.
Yeah,
that's a great power snatch.
No, it's a very, very good, it's a very powerful power snatch.
Yeah.
Would you get more out of a power snatch instead of a power clean? It's probably the inverse. Probably the heavier weights of the power clean might be a bit better, but certainly as a thrower, doing something with a bit more shoulder work may have some benefit there.
So then we just have another power clean here. So this is 118. So that actually she was wearing weightlifting shoes, and the other one there, the Nike 3s, I think. Shame she's wearing the worst weightlifting shoe ever.
They're not holding her back though.
No. So again, chin-ups, upper back movement, phenomenally useful for discus throwers. Kind of goes without explanation almost.
For almost all athletes, I prefer that supinated grip, particularly athletes who are very shoulder dominant. Supinated grip can externally rotate your shoulders, particularly as you come down through the eccentric and you go into that hang portion. It's some useful range of motion to be getting, and you're going to be doing pull-ups anyway, so just supinating the grip and going to a chin-up or whatever you want to call it can be beneficial for shoulder health, particularly with the throwers when they have so much internal rotation going on. Getting a bit of extra external rotation is very valuable.
One thing I do want to comment on is the kind of body composition aspect. So a lot of times you'll see throwers will be quite large and might have a lot of body fat percentage, but something we talk about a lot is kind of maximizing your body composition and the most amount of muscle mass with the least amount of fat mass that you can get away with and still be productive and healthy and useful for your sport, and depending on what sport you're in. So being in a body composition where you have low but still healthy body fat percentage, so you're not looking at something trying to keep yourself at like 5-6% all year round, but you're not looking into those 18, 19, 20% if at all possible. Now I know, of course, like in weightlifting, for example, you know, super heavyweight categories, the extra mass isn't possible. It's not really possible for you to have that much muscle tissue without having some excess fat. But if you're in a case where you are non-super heavyweights or non-unlimited class athlete, it is in your own interest to be in a body composition where you look like you do a sport.
Yeah, she's in phenomenal shape.
Some 60 kilo power or some high pulls. So high pull plus snatch. I like it. I like the touch and go. I like the kind of idea of contraction, relaxation, contraction again for our athletes that are always looking for that ability to minimize the time between a contraction and a relaxation and contraction again. And then we've just the last lift of 21. So we've got touch and go power cleans again. So 2 pulls and 1 power clean.
I think for everyone watching who's not a weightlifter, catching a power clean and then dropping it as you're coming back up is absolutely a-okay. If you're a weightlifter or want to compete in weightlifting at some point, I wouldn't be doing the catch and drop, you know. But these are very, very good.
Complexes.
Yeah.
So again, power cleans. So this is something like women's bars. Even women will agree that adding women's bar is hard work for some. For the human brain, just hates it. And then we've got some very heavy trap bar deadlifts. So something looks like
230, I think.
It is. Oh yeah, 230 exactly down the bottom right.
Yeah.
So very heavy upper back work from blocks. If you really want to overload it at a specific time in your training, having very heavy block work or very heavy overloaded aspects of your lift can be very beneficial. And the trap bar is generally safe, so this heavy with a deadlift probably wouldn't be a great idea in terms of minding your athlete, but a very heavy trap bar deadlift I would be very happy to use. Yeah,
100%. And the use of a belt here as well, you certainly wouldn't ask them not to use a belt in this case. The main aim of these exercises is just the most amount of force you can possibly put in through your 2 femurs down into the ground and be as aggressive as possible with it. So the belt is certainly something you will be looking to bring in here if the athlete is comfortable to use it.
Let us know if there's any other athletes, because a lot of times we get athletes from people you talk about, then we go see them and we see their training and they're like, oh, they're phenomenal. So this is one of those cases, so it's great. We much prefer doing ones where athletes are good athletes and they've good training, because it's so much more useful for us. We can just explain what's going on and explain why it's beneficial and you get stuff from it. The bad stuff isn't always great. It's not great to comment on because it feels kind of yuck. But when there's good training, and it's all good training, it's really great to see. So if you have other athletes, any sport, whatever it is, we'll definitely have a look, because people really enjoy these. And we enjoy looking at those and seeing people do. If you're in your off season, we have our off season program below. 2 blocks, 4 weeks each. It's quite high volume. No Olympic lifts. It's just work capacity, high volume work in the strength movements for your off season. Whole host of different athletes run it. It's tough, but it's well worth it in your off season. And then you may consider, if you have time, run the off season athletes and then maybe finish with a squat program or a squat and pull program, depending on what your needs are. And that'd be a very productive season. I'm looking at you rugby players. They're finished now, aren't they? April?
Nearly
Finished. You've got time.